The Dreamcast! It's remembered as one of the greatest consoles ever to release. I myself have fond memories of the console. Until this day, it is one of my favorite platforms. But what about its successful launch? The triumphant return of Sega, its amazing library, and of course, the reason behind its eventual demise.
So let's pop those rose-tinted glasses off, examine the details, and take an unbiased look at the Sega Dreamcast, and see why it was the last console Sega would ever release after entering the console business in 1983, 18 years early. Last week we saw the once mighty Sega attempting to recover from a string of failures, such as
the Sega CD, the 32X, and the Saturn.
Though many challenges were encountered along the way, they had developed a truly intriguing next-gen console, and were preparing to unleash it upon the masses.
Sega was confident about the Dreamcast debut with significant outside interest and pre-orders.
Which brings us to
the launch. The Dreamcast was the first 6th generation console released by a healthy margin. 6th gen consisted of the Sega Dreamcast, Sony PlayStation 2, Nintendo GameCube, and Microsoft's original Xbox. Unfortunately, they were unable to meet their shipping goals for the Japanese launch due to a shortage of the PowerVR chipsets caused by a high failure rate of the NEC-developed GPU chips.
Yes, the chips that Bernie Stoller had claimed weren't as good as the 3DFX option.
Due to this, Sega stopped pre-orders in Japan much earlier than originally planned. The console officially launched on November 27, 1998 at a price of 29,000 yen, approximately $205 US. Their available stock sold out by the end of the day.
So things are looking good, right? Well,
even though Sega had announced that Sonic Adventure, the next installment of its popular mascot that never received a mainline entry on the Saturn, would launch with the console, it and Sega Rally Championship 2, the sequel to one of its other popular franchises, were delayed, leaving the console launch with only 4 launch games: Virtual Fighter 3TB, Pin Pin Tri-Icelon,
I can never say that made-up word right,
Godzilla Generations, and July, of which only one, Virtual Fighter 3, sold well. This did not help them in their effort to build a sufficient install base to protect themselves from the arrival of their competitors, mainly Sony and the PlayStation 2. Sega had hoped to sell over 1 million units by February 1999, though due to the shortage of consoles, lack of games, and already damaged reputation of the brand, less than 900,000 were sold by that time. To make matters worse, there were reports of unsatisfied customers returning their Dreamcasts. And not only that, but using the refund to purchase PlayStation products. Sega did, however, see some success with the release of more games such as the aforementioned Sonic Adventure, Sega Rally Championship 2, Soul Calibur, and its first bona fide hit, the quirky and very Japanese Seaman.
No, not men, man. Get your head out of the gutter.
These releases and price reduction to 19,000 yen, approximately $135 US, right before the US release, did increase sales and help Sega gain 17% on its shares. But with the price reduction, the console was now unprofitable, and profitability was one of the main goals behind the console, and something Sega sorely needed at the time. The original Japanese launch was tepid at best, with too few games and a lackluster ad campaign.
However, things were about to start looking up across the pond, but not before a few more punches to the face.
The US Dreamcast release was met with a major blow before its launch in the form of EA Chief Creative Officer Bing Gordon announcing that EA, the largest video game publisher in the world at the time, would not develop games for the platform due to Sega flip-flopping on the hardware configuration, saying that Sega was not acting like a competent hardware company. Gordon also said that Sega wouldn't give EA the kind of license that EA has had over the past 5 years,
which would see EA as having exclusive rights as the only sports game developer on the platform.
This was out of the question, seeing as how Sega had just spent $10 million on the purchase of Visual Concepts, a new sports game developer. While Visual Concepts' 2K series of sports games would fill the void of EA sports titles on the platform, and many considered them to be superior games, the loss of EA's brand power of titles like Madden NFL was definitely felt.
Things, once again, were not looking so good for Sega's new console. All that being said, the US launch was much more successful than the Japanese launch. Like, much more.
Sega of America did a much better job with the launch than Sega of Japan by providing 18 games and more stock to meet demand, even going as far as offering Hollywood video customers the opportunity to rent the console pre-launch. Sega of America also teamed with marketing firms Fucon and Belding and Access Communications to develop the popular marketing campaign.
I remember not knowing what the hell its thinking meant in regards to the console, but it was intriguing.
The Dreamcast launched in North America on September 9th, 1999 for $199.
That's a whole lot of nines.
$99.99 for $199 in fact. Over 9 months
There's another 9.
after the original Japanese launch. Sega sold more than 225,132 units in 24 hours, earning more than $98.4 million, making it, at the time, the biggest 24 hours in entertainment retail history. Sales crossed 1 million units within 2 months, and Sega commanded 31% market share of the North American video game market by Christmas 1999, which isn't bad considering the company's standing at that point.
Overall, the North American launch was substantially more successful than the Japanese launch and exactly what Sega needed. But misfortune wasn't quite done with Sega.
The Dreamcast released in Europe a little over a month after the US launch on October 14th, 1999, and almost a year after the original launch. While the launch was successful and better than the Japanese launch, it didn't soar to the heights of the US release. The console had a 25% price drop 11 months after release in hopes of spurring sales, but this did little to really help, and the console sat at only about 1 million units sold in Europe in its first year. Furthermore, the launch didn't go so well in other territories either, such as Australia and New Zealand, where, according to some, because of Australian customs services, it launched with major internet compatibility issues, console shortages, missing features, only 5 launch games, virtually no additional peripherals such as controllers, etc., and at an astoundingly high price point of $499 Australian, approximately $335 US, $135 more than the $199 US release.
Holy shit, you Aussies must be loaded.
To add insult to injury, 2 major Australian retail chains reported that a combined total of only 13 Dreamcast units were sold in the first few days after launch.
And honestly, that seems like a feat unto itself, though not the kind of feat that Sega was hoping for.
While the console is looked at as having a strong start, which it did in some territories such as the US, it definitely had many struggles from the start in other territories such as Japan and Australia. Even with these struggles though, it can't be understated that the console was thriving in the US market, which was the biggest market in the video game space at the time, only being overshadowed by China today, though the console never officially released in the behemoth market of China due to a complete ban on video game consoles the country's government enacted during this time that wasn't lifted until 2015.
Yeah, you heard that right. 2015. What the fuck, China?
So with a reasonably successful launch, all but with its hurdles, the Dreamcast was available to the masses. So now the question was, what would those masses think of the new console?
Which means it's time to look at
The reception.
and also brings us to the end of this chapter, though far from the end of the story. So if you've enjoyed what you've seen thus far, then check out the next part 1 week from the release of this video, right here in this 5-part series. And also, if you missed the last one, check it out right here. Visit my other channel, RetroJKXY, link in the description, where videos like this will reside moving forward, and maybe consider hitting the subscribe button. I want to say thanks to all my patrons out there. Without you guys' support, videos like this would not be possible. And a special thanks to my top tier members, Marge G and Silverlock. You guys rock. If you want to support the channel, consider hitting the like and subscribe button. Or if you want to do a bit more, check out the exclusive benefits over on my Patreon. And until next time, you're beautiful, you're awesome, and I love absolutely every one of you. Thanks for watching.